this, and it's been super fun to have her
put
take
her in
on
the
this.
big box.
Hold on, I'm doing it. I'm just moving everybody around. That's how we're gonna set it up and get it all to how it works. Jessica, Matt, and Dave, welcome to BVB. Thank you for doing this. How are you this morning? Uh-oh. Are you muted? Wait.
I am. I survived the meeting.
There we go. How are you?
Oh, man. I'm frantically writing up this ESPN stuff that I took a break to talk with you guys about.
Well, we appreciate that. For those people who are not in the meeting or monitoring the meeting, what was it today? And Dave's got a ton of questions as to how the Mass Gaming Control Board is how they're handling this. But overall, what went on today with ESPN going in front of the Mass Gaming Control Board?
So I think this wasn't like a licensing hearing or anything. Basically, MGC, Massachusetts Gaming Commission, kind of asked, can we get a little more information about what Penn's relationship with ESPN is going to be? In particular, they wanted to know about College Game Day because, as we might recall, the Barstool College Sportsbook or college football show got in a fair amount of trouble with Ohio and some regulators for promoting betting on this show that traveled around to college campuses. So what we do know about College Game Day is nobody on stage, not Pat, not Herbie, none of those guys are going to do anything related to ESPN Bet within the show while they're on campuses. There will be no on-site activations revolving around ESPN Bet, no signs about ESPN Bet, but during the broadcast, they may record something in advance that's some sort of promotion related to ESPN Bet. You may see an ad because the rule in Massachusetts is the audience has to be 75% or greater 21 plus. They have that for TV. They don't have that for when you're like surrounded by people from Boston College or whatever with their signs and stuff. So that's kind of, they came in with a game plan, which I think was very different from when Barstool came in, and it was only after they asked about this show that they started to be like, oh, yeah, we see what you mean. That's kind of a problem. But it seems like, and I think this is where Dave is going to have questions, it seems like even though they came in with such a big, good game plan that the MGC wasn't super thrilled and still had lots of questions.
Well, one of the main questions, and thank you for coming on the show on such short notice, but I was riveted to your Twitter feed today. Tell the people what your Twitter handle is, or X or whatever we're calling it now, because you had me waiting for your next tweet. I was laying down going, what are they saying next?
Oh, yeah, I got quiet for a while because they were talking about the same thing. I'm sorry I left you hanging. I am at Jess Welman on Twitter, JESSWELMAN. I kind of tell people I watch the boring meetings so you don't have to.
And you did an unbelievable
my Twitter
job.
Persona.
That was outstanding work today. Now, my question is this, because I worked in books here in Vegas for like 17 years, and there seems to be a little bit of a gray area about, they go on game day, they go on now, there's picks every day. They're forcing people that 100% never made a bet in their life, but are professional broadcasters, to go on and give a same game parlay. And they're doing this with all of the different, shows and things like that. But College Game Day is about college football. In the end, the last 10 minutes, they go on and pick the games against the spread every time, which is fine. But now they have ESPN Bet, and they're booking the bets on that side of it, although it's a different company. Is that what Massachusetts is ultimately asking about?
A little bit, yes. So this is where it gets a little weird. There's a regulation in Massachusetts that essentially says if you are the operator and a licensed affiliate, a marketing affiliate, that you are technically not allowed to tell anybody to place a specific bet. You cannot tell them you need to go out and you need to bet on this. They have to date been fairly lenient in how that was happening. I used an example of, I was like, Massachusetts's other golden boy, Simmons, like Bill Simmons has a same game parlay that is the Bill Simmons same game parlay on FanDuel. And they have said that they haven't objected to it. They haven't objected to Matthew Berry being on NBC Sunday Night Football giving his DraftKings picks. They haven't objected to any of this. Could they technically? That's a little more up for debate. And I think some of the conversation today was, where does that line get drawn? Todd Grossman, who is the interim executive director, he basically runs the actual operations of MGC. And then you have like the 5 commissioners that vote on the important stuff. He said, currently our stance has been that if at the end of, NFL Sunday game day on ESPN, the guys give their picks against the spread, that doesn't really feel as the same way as saying like, you, Dave and Matt, must go and you must bet at least $100 on this market because it's that good. But the commissioners now are like, it's one thing when there's DraftKings and then there's kind of some space and then there's NBC, or there's Bill Simmons and there's some in the Ringer and then some space and then there's FanDuel, but ESPN Bet and ESPN, where is the space?
Same name. It's the same letters.
It's you and Commissioner Eileen O'Brien are on the same page that do they need to be treated differently about this particular rule because it's the same name?
Just as Penn, like, let's just say Mass comes back and says, hey, we're not comfortable with this. We're not going to license you in Massachusetts. Does it matter to the company? I mean, this is now going to be a large brand. And look, I love my home state, and Dave and I talk about it all the time. We feel like Massachusetts has done a phenomenal job with asking the hard questions and really not putting up with any of the BS that some other states, like we saw when other states went legal, some of the shenanigans that went on, like Kansas, where it just was basically a free-for-all for lobbyists. But does it matter if Mass says, no, we're not cool with this? ESPN Bet, you're not operating here in our state.
This was a conversation that I was having somewhat off Twitter with people today, which is, if you look in Massachusetts, I think Barstool is like 4th, 5th, I think, out of like 8 operators. They're not doing great. At what point do you just say, like, you are just way too high maintenance for me, I'm not going to be in Massachusetts anymore? Because it's really, I admire Massachusetts that they are willing to ask tough questions. Like you said, they really take their jobs very seriously. But when you think about the size of Massachusetts and the total amount of people in the US who are betting, it's a very outsized kind of authority that this group of 5 people is having, that they're basically making demands of how ESPN Bet runs their entire business, which is they're able to do that. That's their prerogative as the regulator in Massachusetts. But at what point, I mean, for what, 6% of the Massachusetts market, is it worth, torpedoing all of your plans for ESPN?
I don't know. I
Bet?
think, but also you have to think about, like, and this is for lawyers and stuff to answer, but they're always setting precedent. If they set this precedent, other states are going to go, wait a second, they said that they did this, and now why aren't they doing this in this state? This is where this just rushed to open up in a different state, but every state's operating differently, yet the product is the same, gets it all convoluted. That's the hard part about all this. And like, we've been doing it a certain way in Nevada. The one tweet that really got my attention that you put on there was about how nobody in the risk room for Penn, quote unquote, ESPN Bet will talk to anybody that does content. And I was like, that's actually not how this works a lot of times, because they want to know how things happen and work, or what the book might need and different things like that. They put these bet percentages out. They have people that put this out all the time with the bet percentages and what the most popular, public sides are, et cetera, et cetera. Is there going to be a line between church and state there, Jess?
I misunderstood what you were saying for a moment, but that's a very interesting point, which is that, yes, sports books, when I worked for an affiliate, was constantly hearing from sports books, here are our betting splits, here are their things. I think the concern is actually the inverse of this, which is Adam Schefter gets his, latest news text message, and he's like, yo, Caesars, you should know I'm about to tweet that what I just found out, that Will Levis is the starting quarterback and Ryan Tannehill is not the starting quarterback. That's the big concern. Do I think anybody is ever going to do that? No. But like, I don't think anybody like that Schefter or Waj or whoever is going to like blow up their careers for something like this. But I think it's smart that Penn is putting things like this into place to say to everyone, even if they wanted to, it's explicitly not allowed. There are measures in place to make sure that this doesn't happen.
It's CYA, right? Though, I mean, a lot of it is just a CYA move to say none of our talent is going to talk to the risk room. But if it happens, it happens. Correct.
But let me give you has anybody else thought to do this before?
What do you mean?
Has anybody else come out and said, hey, we're going to do this deal with Shams, but you should know this is how it works. And Shams not
because
allowed to
Shams,
do nobody's been forthcoming like this.
Well, no,
before,
it happened. It happened with the NBA with Shams with his tweet.
And then they,
with the draft,
after the fact, had to be like, oh, that's not how it works, blah, blah, blah. At least they're getting out in front of it before anything happens.
Tip your hat to them. Absolutely, they are.
That, I think, is at least, it's a very low bar to clear, but at least that's something. Because that's the thing is with Barstool and with all of these other guys, nobody's ever really said how it's set up. And said, we explicitly have a rule that you're not allowed to talk to these people.
It just seems so obvious, right? But if there's not actually a rule or in the company manual that states our policy is as a reporter, you will never talk to anybody at Penn or anybody in the risk room. That just seems like a natural thing, but I think it does need to be stated because as ESPN gets further and further down the line with this, do you think that Mass is happy? Do you think that the license is at all in jeopardy?
We can count the times that a license, I can only think of one time that a license has been revoked in a post-PASPA era, and that's the play-up license in New Jersey. Tennessee, remember that whole brouhaha with 24/7, and they were they had rampant money laundering and things like that, and then they didn't shut that down. So if this is all it takes, it would be an unprecedented kind of situation. I don't even think it's there was conversations of they want to see this essentially kind of Bible of how ESPN and Penn are going to interrelate that's internal. That's the request from Massachusetts Gaming Commission.
Will they abide by that? Will they give them?
They volunteered to give it to them.
Okay.
The question is, how fast can they get it to them? Because in theory, they want to rebrand and the launch is set for a week from today, right? So I don't even think they're going to delay the launch, but it's one of these things. When you give kind of license approvals, you can put conditions on them, which is what happened with Penn and Barstool is we're going to let you do this, but you have until X day to get, your boxes ticked and things together, or we will have to consider taking it away from you.
Or we will fine you, in which case the books just pay the fine because it's less expensive than getting a lawyer and, fighting it. They just go, okay, we messed up. Here's the money. We're going to keep operating until they push comes to shove and they revoke the license. Now, the question also becomes with the communication and things like this, the leagues at the beginning of all this PASPA stuff talked about the integrity of the game and these integrity fees and whether or not it is nefarious, sneaky moves being made. The perception of it in their own language is bad. And now you're going to, are there too many sports betting commercials now on television and on radio? Because I think so, but I'm not the audience. Do you think so as someone in this space?
Oh, I don't. Let me answer this two different ways. I know for a fact that we've actually not done any real substantive research on this that shows because there are too many advertisements, we've seen an uptick in problem gambling or underage gambling. Nobody's done that work. Do I find it overwhelming and annoying and counterproductive? Yes. I live in Kentucky. We just launched.
Oh, you're getting an onslaught of it. Oh, my goodness.
I will tell you, the podcasts I listen to are not sports podcasts. They're about the housewives. I listen to a podcast going over old episodes of Dance Moms, and I get served FanDuel ads every break on these because they just buy blanket. Are you listening to a podcast in Kentucky? Then whatever podcast it is, we're going to slap our FanDuel ad on it.
Well, so
I mean, I
knowing
would
that,
hope if somebody's like, let's target the Dance Mom fans.
Oh,
Those
okay.
people are better.
So-
It's everyone.
it's everyone.
Ro-
But so
yeah.
now ESPN has the megaphone now, despite the cord cutting and all these people telling you that, less and less people are watching ESPN and only watching games now. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. But it's going to be in the content now. Is that
Isn't
different?
it already though?
It is, but they're not an ESPN bet. There's that
Correct.
line. It's like, we're talking about it, go to DraftKings. We're talking about it, go to FanDuel. And they're paying them to do that.
Well,
Do
Penn
they
paid them a
stop
lot to
taking
be able to do
advertising
this.
money, Jess? Do we see no more DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM ads on ESPN and only ESPN Bet?
They gave us that clarity today, actually. They have a monopoly on what are called integrations, where we're going to have, Mina Kimes and whoever do something in the show about whether they think a bet is good. That's going to be only ESPN Bet. Will they be selling ad space? Like, just, you want to show your commercial during Monday Night Football, they will continue to sell ad space.
They
but
have
you just
to,
won't
don't they?
see within the walls of the programming, you're only going to see ESPN Bet.
It's really interesting because I think they're doing that because they don't want to deal with any type of lawsuit, any type of FTC problem by not taking any more information, any more bets advertising wise. Do you think there will be shows, DraftKings, FanDuel shows that are not ESPN shows per se, but ESPN would consider carrying them because they don't want to have any legal problems without, basically only taking ESPN Bet and having a monopoly on it?
I don't think it hasn't come up as a concern that I've heard of. I mean, we have similar types of deals that we've seen in this space before. Bally's, although they're not really leveraging them, technically they have integrations with the Sinclair network of sites. And
right.
So it's like, it's not a new idea to, PointsBet and NBC Universal had something very similar as well. That I don't know if there's monopoly concerns there. I think it's just the Penn put a lot of money down to get what they got, but ESPN was probably just like, listen, we're not going to give up valuable commercial space our most likely ad sales people. We're not going to lose those clients. So yeah, we're going to keep taking FanDuel and DraftKings money on ads, but you can have within, the actual programming, the monopoly.
Last one for me, Jessica. Again, thank you for joining us. How was Florida and this gaming conference? Did you actually go down there and kick a field goal? And what was the thing that you learned the most from one of these gaming conferences down there? What was your takeaway from that?
So our group, SBC, hosts really great events. I think, Matt, you've been to SBC Summit North America in New Jersey. This was our SB Summit Latino America Conference, which was last week in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, technically, at Seminole Hard Rock. We throw a great party. So we rented out Hard Rock Stadium and got to go on the field and do activations. I tried. I knew I couldn't throw. I knew I couldn't jump, but I'm like, I could maybe kick an extra point. I Googled best practices, field goal kicking. And I really thought that I would be not terrible. And it got maybe 2 feet in the air and then just dribbled off.
Oh, no.
It happens.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, speaking of Hard Rock and speaking of Seminole. So,
this is news too.
So I got a DM today from a BVB Brigade member who showed me his ticket. He placed a mobile sports bet today in the state of Florida. They are taking bets today for certain people.
They are.
Part one is, okay, how does this end in Florida? Part two is, does this open up the door for Oklahoma, California, Idaho, the other tribal states that are looking at legalization through a tribe licensing process, essentially? Does that mean that California could go legal, say, in the next couple of years if they change their constitution? I know there's other issues with California, but how big is it that Florida is right now taking bets?
Okay, I'll do my best to make this like a 3-minute answer, but it's really like a 45-minute answer.
We'll have you back on. We got the number and email now. We'll have you back on.
Okay, shortest version of this. Yes, Florida sports betting kind of soft launched back today with this Hard Rock bet launch of people who, when it was briefly online in 2021, were playing. And I think probably like your high tier VIP rewards members, I think those are kind of the people who are on there right now. This is a good sign that Hard Rock and the Seminole feel decent about their chances, but they kind of have two different court cases to beat. They have the federal Supreme Court of the United States case, which we don't even know if they're going to hear it. They're still in the process of, Wes Flagler is the name of the group of basically racetracks and whatever that want to offer sports betting and are challenging this. That one doesn't look so solid. But they also have this state Supreme Court case that's a little more, there's a little more meat to the argument here, which is that, you know, Florida passed this thing called Amendment B, I believe it's called, Amendment 8. I'm sorry, 50 states, I can't keep up. Essentially saying you can't do any new gambling without taking it to the voters. And this was kind of circumventing that. And they're going to challenge that at the state level because the federal court opinion essentially said, well, all we can really evaluate is what's being handled federally between what happens on tribal lands and what DeSantis agreed to. And that seems fine. If you don't like the online stuff, you got to go to Florida and challenge it. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, but there's more to that than it seems the federal case had. So we're going to see what happens there. They could file for a restraining order in the Florida Supreme Court and try to get Florida Hard Rock Bet offline again. They haven't at this point, but it's still a possibility. As for other states, Florida's just such a unique beast because it's just the Seminoles, right? You know, it's one tribe. You get one tribe to agree to it. I mean, if you're one tribe and you're getting the third most populous state all to yourself, you're probably willing to make a fair amount of concessions to get there, right? California, we've seen it's not just tribes, it's card rooms, racetracks, the lottery. Everybody wants a piece. Not all tribes are aligned in what they want. So it's very hard to get just even buy-in on something to bring to voters or bring to a governor. Oklahoma, the governor there put out plans for sports betting without talking to a single tribe and without talking to the guy who put a bill forth this year. So he kind of went rogue, and the Oklahoma group of tribes released a statement like, it's really disappointing that you wouldn't ask us anything about what you think about this. I think Minnesota, of all the states with tribes, is the one that is trending towards resolution the most, just because we've seen some bills kind of put together versions of this. But I just don't ever read too much into Florida as an indicator of the rest of tribal gaming, because it's a monopoly and you just don't have that. It's a very different setup fundamentally than any other state. That wasn't 3 minutes, but I did my best.
It was 3 minutes and 30 seconds. That was
great.
You hit the mark, Jess.
Jess, before I let you go, where can folks read your stuff with SBC America?
SBCamericas.com is the best place to go. Follow me on Twitter. I tend to tweet all our big stories. We're also on Twitter, but we don't, I feel like it's so hard to build a Twitter account these days that we aren't as great about it. But we do have a newsletter that just sends you every morning what our 10 stories of the day that we've published are. We publish a lot, 7 to 10 stories a day. So
I get it.
Head over to SBCamericas.com and hit that, and you won't miss anything.